Good morning. It's Sunday morning. It's 9 o'clock, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And we're here with a Sunday thought. Even though I had it written in my day timer that the clocks were going back today, even though I knew that when I went to bed last night, at least I think I knew that. Well, I don't know that I thought about it. And this morning I woke up very early, got up, and, just went through kind of my morning and looked up at my clock, my digital, my phone, I think it was. And I went, what? What time is that? Oh dear, older brain not working. And I went, oh my goodness me. So I began thinking about this. And I remember years ago, people saying, why do we have this clock going back and forward? Because it was originally brought in so that the farmers had daylight during like the winter time. Well, I think it was or summer, maybe, I don't know which way it was, but I knew it was to do with the farmers farming. And a friend of mine who was a farmer used to say, we have lights on our tractors now. We don't have to count on the sun. We everything is lit up. And why are we doing this? In fact, that was the first time I'd ever heard someone complain about this twice a year shifting time. So I did a little bit of thinking about this today because I realize every time this happens, my own inner clock gets out of whack. It takes me maybe even up to 2.5, possibly longer to get used to, the time shifting and changing, that because my inner clock tells me, okay, it's time to do this, it's time to do that. It's kind of, I have a lot of clocks around me because I'm very time oriented. And in fact, I've got every clock changed now except for one. I've got to remember how to do it. No, there's two of them, sorry, that I have to remember how to do. Now, so I just question why we still have this old idea that we must change the time. Like, it doesn't make sense to me logically anymore. I can see why they did that the farmers needed extra time to, so that they had those extra hours. But really, in reality, do we really need it? If we have a certain time, we adjust to that. Just think of little babies. I've raised a couple of kids, and I know when they were little and this happened. And I remember even when they started school and this happened, it threw their systems way out. But even when they're little, we've got a schedule. And then all of a sudden we can't, because of this time change that is put upon us, their schedule changes too. But they're already into a system. You get fed whatever. I know when I used to feed them, they used to have like they used to have every 4 hours, I think they got fed there for a while. They know that timing. They wake up, they're waiting for their feed. And then when they start school, I remember putting up with crabby kids for a few weeks while they readjusted to the time change, especially those ones when the clocks go forward and they have to get up that hour early. So how is it affecting us? How does it affect us? I believe it does. People are sensitive to energy like me. It does. It's like, oh, crash. No, we have to figure out what to do with this. But I do know that people have been protesting this for a long time and not to any avail. It's still going on. So I was, even though I knew it was coming, I was throwing right off this morning. I was sitting reading my book because I was up very early. And all of a sudden I thought, I guess inside I felt like I better get moving. And then I look up and I go, I've got a whole nother hour. Oh my goodness. So anyway, it's a little bit of a thing to look at your systems. How do your systems react to this kind of time change? But I want to expand that a little bit more in the sense that what other things affect us? Diet does, for sure. When we change diets, when we start a new job or a new project, when we have something happen that is changing or gives our nervous system a shock. All of those things we have to adjust to. And we get used to doing that to some degree. We get used to adjusting. I'm a person who likes sunshine. I'm a person who likes light. I'm a person who has spent a lot of time in my life in warm climate, but also knowing where things are. And I didn't grow up with time changes, even though I know because of astrology that New Zealand actually has a perpetual half an hour time thing. But you grow up with it. You don't realize the shifting or changing because you're used to the pattern. But I want us to think about what else changes us. What else gives us an inference of what is happening or what is taking place? And how do we adjust to that? I think children have the hardest time. As adults, we know it's coming because we've lived with it. And even though I forgot about it, it still was a shock again. Like, oh, right, I've got this whole hour now. What am I supposed to do with it? And it throws everything out for me personally. I can only talk about myself. I get thrown out personally. It's like everything gets wonky. And so that's twice a year that happens to me, and I have to readjust my thinking. It's actually the inner clock that we have. We do have an inner clock. And also for those of you that have young children or grandchildren, don't be too hard on them in the next couple of weeks because they're adjusting to all of this change in their own little systems. They're adjusting to have you maybe not used to getting actually they can sleep longer, but they're not used to that. So they'll be waking up at the regular time, but it's not quite regular. So that makes them tired at the end of the day. All these things, all these regulations has to change. I just feel empathy with that because I know what I have to go through, and I'm an adult, and I've done it for years now. But this morning it rankled at me, actually. It was like, oh, no, I know what this means. I know where I've got to go and what I've got to do, but it's still not something that I think is necessary. That's my own personal opinion, that I don't think it's necessary anymore. I think it was necessary. I don't think it's necessary now, but I also know people have protested this. I remember big protests about it. I don't know how many years ago, I've lost track, but probably in the last 10, 15 years, people have protested that. Like, what's the necessity? But I think people have forgotten about protesting it anymore. And I'm just wondering, maybe we should think about that. Maybe we should contact our representatives and say, hey, why are we still doing this? Because it upsets people for, I would say, minimum of 10 days to 2 weeks as you readjust your inner clock to what it is. And that's my thought today. It's a little cantankerous, I guess, for everything, but it's like, oh, here we go again. I just didn't feel like I wanted to go through that again, that adjustment, waking up too early, getting tired earlier than I maybe would like to be. As my inner clock begins to recalibrate itself to this imposed difference. And, one way or the other, we need to be, I think we need to look after our energy. We need to look at where we are at and make it life comfortable, make it so it flows. And my empathy is with little kids because they have the hardest time because their body is in a routine that's changed. Little kids don't like routines change. They don't know what to do with it energetically. They're not used to it. By the time they're teens, they usually can roll with it. But when you're tiny, from a baby to probably 10, it's very hard. And, well, I'm on the other side of the things, but it's not hard. It's hard for me too. So anyway, that's my Sunday thought. Not the most probably inspiring, but that was the thought I woke up with today. You have a great week. I'll see you tomorrow night for mental mind treatments. Remember that. Bye now.